Did you know that before Glen Bell opened the first Taco Bell restaurant, he made a living selling hot dogs? But in 1951, Bell tasted a taco so delicious that it changed the course of his entire life, and I would argue the course of human history. And believe it or not, nearly 75 years later, the Mexican restaurant where he ordered that taco is still open for business. So in this episode of the Studio Review, I'm tasting the exact same taco that catapulted a struggling hot dog stand into the global restaurant that it is today. Glen Bell didn't start out with dreams of becoming a titan in the fast food industry. His dream was to open a mini golf course, but he left home to serve in the Marines during World War II, and one of his jobs was in the kitchen. So when he returned home after the war, he opened Bell's Drive-In in his hometown of San Bernardino, which is in Southern California. And that was actually in this building right here. Just to set the scene here, about 2 miles away, a couple brothers named Dick and Mac McDonald opened up a restaurant just 8 years earlier. When that launched, it was a drive-in barbecue restaurant, but hamburgers quickly became their best-selling items, so in 1948 they relaunched their restaurant as a walk-up hamburger stand. I had no idea how close the founders of McDonald's and Taco Bell were, both geographically and in terms of their timeline. It's also funny to me that they both just identified their restaurants by their last names, McDonald's Hamburgers and Bell's Drive-In. Pretty straightforward. I actually had the chance to visit the site of the original McDonald's, which was torn down at some point, but the building that sits there now serves as a museum for McDonald's memorabilia throughout the years. Ironically, at the time I was in San Bernardino, the building that used to be Bell's Drive-In was for sale. I think somebody must have bought it recently because it's not on the market anymore, but how cool would that be to open up a restaurant there? I even checked with the US Patent and Trademark Office, and the name Bell's Drive-In is still available. Honestly, huge missed opportunity on my part. Okay, so when Bell opened up his drive-in in 1948, that was the same year the McDonald's brothers relaunched their restaurant, this time with what they called the Speedy Service System, which was their method of preparing and delivering food just minutes after it was ordered.
Here you are. What's this? Your food. No. I just ordered. And now it's here. You sure? All right.
If you've ever seen The Founder, all of this was happening before Ray Kroc ever got involved. I just thought that clip does a good job of showing how novel it was at the time. Both McDonald's and Bell's Drive-In were situated along historic Route 66, and Bell was trying to compete with the McDonald's brothers by selling hamburgers and hot dogs, but he just couldn't keep up. One thing the Michael Keaton movie didn't really show is that San Bernardino was, and is, pretty racially diverse, with a high percentage of Latino residents. And so way back in 1937, even before Dick and Mac McDonald opened their barbecue restaurant, a woman named Lucia Rodriguez opened a restaurant called the Meatla Cafe right in that same area. Lucia's husband was working the railroad nearby, and she opened the restaurant as a way to provide for her family and serve the community. She and her daughters ran the restaurant, and it became a staple of the Mexican-American community in San Bernardino. Local politicians, celebrities, and sports teams would come to eat at the Meatla, and it also served as a meeting place for local business leaders and anti-discrimination activists. San Bernardino was still super segregated at the time, but the Meatla also attracted white patrons, a lot of whom were trying Mexican food for the first time. Patrons like Glen Bell. Bell opened his drive-in literally right next door to the Meatla Cafe. And even though both Bell's Drive-In and that original McDonald's location closed eventually, the Meatla hasn't gone anywhere. You gotta respect a restaurant that has stayed in business in the exact same location for almost 90 years now, especially since San Bernardino has struggled with high crime rates for the past few decades. Personally, I don't stress about that when I travel, and I know that's a privilege, but I am careful when it comes to online crime. And that's why I'm thankful to be partnering with Aura, who's the sponsor of this episode. I didn't know this until recently, but Americans are losing upwards of $10 billion annually to online crime, which is outpacing home burglary losses. It's easy to think of ways that we can protect ourselves against physical crime, right? Like we install video doorbells at our houses or bars over the windows at our businesses. But at least for me, it's not as easy to know where to start when it comes to protecting myself from online crime. But thankfully, Aura has you covered. Aura sends me alerts if they ever find my phone number, email address, passwords, or social security number leaked online. I don't know if you guys saw this, but apparently billions of records were recently stolen from national public data, including the social security numbers of a bunch of Americans. Not good. But Aura's data broker removal tool is always running in the background, so they're detecting and removing my personal information from the internet without me having to do anything. They also provide a bunch of other features to keep you safe online, including a VPN and scam call protection. So if you want to get better protection from online crime, you can click the link below, scan this QR code, or head to aura.com/SamReid to start a 2-week free trial. And that's plenty of time for them to search and let you know what what information of yours could be available to bad actors online. That's aura.com/Sam Reid, spelled R-E-I-D. So back in San Bernardino, the story goes that from his restaurant, Glen Bell could see lines forming outside of the Meatla. People were passing his restaurant to go get tacos from this cafe, and so he went over there and tried one for himself. The taco that he tried was what's called a taco dorado, which is what English-speaking restaurants would call like a hard shell taco or a crunchy taco.
And this is not something that I'm used to seeing on the menu at a Mexican restaurant, right? Mm-hmm. Like a hard shell taco.
You don't see those anymore.
Yeah.
This is a recipe that the founders of Meatla Cafe brought from Jalisco. So people say Mexicans don't eat hard shell tacos. That's absolutely not true.
And the shell is made by frying a tortilla like you do when you make homemade tortilla chips. And that one taco put into motion a series of events that indirectly led to me eating nothing but Taco Bell for 30 days. Not a joke. Apparently, Bell asked the family to see how it was made, and they accommodated his request and took him back into the kitchen.
He really liked them, and he wanted to know how they were made. So my father-in-law accommodated him and took him in the back.
Bell says that he developed his own version of the hard shell taco that could be made quickly and efficiently on a fast food assembly line.
He never claimed to have invented the taco, the hard shell taco, but that his innovation was prefabricating the shells.
And so in 1951, 3 years after opening his drive-in, he added tacos to the menu and sold them for 19 cents. According to Bell, the first customer to try one of his tacos said, "That was good. Give me another." And he said that's when he knew that he was onto something. But the timeline would suggest that he wasn't all in on tacos just yet, because at the time he was still operating multiple hamburger restaurants, and it would be 3 years before he opened his first taco-specific restaurant. And that restaurant wasn't Taco Bell. In 1954 and 1955, he opened 3 Mexican-inspired fast food restaurants called Taco Tia. And at the same time Bell was launching Taco Tia, Ray Kroc entered the picture over at McDonald's. There were only 9 McDonald's locations at the time, but Kroc started franchising like crazy, and things really started to explode for them. And as you might know, he ended up buying the McDonald's brothers out of their own company in 1961. Bell, on the other hand, set his sights on expanding Taco Tia into Los Angeles, but apparently his business partner wasn't interested. So Bell sold his stake in Taco Tia and tried a second time with new partners. He opened a new restaurant called El Taco, but eventually decided that he didn't want partners at all and sold his stake in El Taco as well. So, third time's the charm. He used his money from El Taco to open up a new restaurant called Taco Bell. The first official Taco Bell location was opened in 1962 at 7112 Firestone Boulevard in Downey, California. For context, that's 11 years after he tried the taco from the Meatla, and almost an hour and a half away from his original drive-in. The menu at this first Taco Bell featured frijoles, burritos, tostadas, chili burgers, and tacos. Each of those items cost 19 cents, which is roughly like $2 in today's money. Bell had previously developed a sauce for chili dogs at his other restaurants, and that's what eventually became his taco sauce. But his white customers didn't really know any better. Apparently people didn't really know how to eat or even pronounce a lot of the items, so early menus included phonetic spellings. But somehow it worked. They quickly expanded to more locations, and Glen Bell became known for his elaborate grand openings. And I would also add, culturally insensitive. If you want to make a pilgrimage to the original Taco Bell location, it's sadly just a parking lot now. But Taco Bell Corporate moved the building itself all the way to their headquarters in Irvine in order to save it from demolition. I actually had the opportunity to see it in person when I went there last year. They refer to it as numero uno.
I don't know if I could fit through those doors. I feel like the doors are like for elves or something. Little taco elves.
You can, however, still visit the Meatla Cafe, which is why I came to San Bernardino in the first place. So just to reiterate, this is the exact same location where they started in 1937. They expanded the building in the mid-1940s, but it's been located on this plot of land the entire time. And it's been passed down within the same family. It's still owned by Lucia's grandchildren and great-grandchildren. There are a lot of other Mexican establishments nearby, like there was a sign for a tortilla factory right near where I parked, and there was a burrilla place right across the street. On the inside, it's definitely like a sit-down Mexican restaurant, not like a quick service taco place. There's a bar on one side and a seating area on the other. So once I was seated, I ordered 3 different tacos: a shredded beef hard taco, a chicken hard taco, and a carne asada soft taco. As I waited, chips and salsa were served to my table, and I also took some time checking out the wall beside me, which was covered with articles about the cafe. The chips were delicious. They tasted different to me than the chips at my local Mexican restaurant, but it was hard to put my finger on what the X factor was. The tacos came out, and I could immediately immediately tell that these shells were hand fried. They were thinner than the chips and a little bit misshapen, not like the perfectly formed hard shells from the grocery store. In addition to the meat, the tacos were topped with lettuce, cheese, and tomato, which is pretty similar to what Taco Bell does. These days, a standard taco just comes with lettuce and cheese, and when you make it supreme, it adds tomatoes and sour cream. The shells at the meatloaf were greasy to the touch, which was a good thing in my opinion, because that meant that they were recently fried.
Because here at Moonlight Cafe, they still sell those hard shell tacos, recipe almost unchanged since their opening in 1937, but they fry them fresh. That's the key.
I bit into the shredded beef taco, and the first thing that jumped out to me was the flavor of the beef. Just leaps and bounds more flavorful than the ground beef at Taco Bell. And I know some of you are gonna be like, well, that's because Taco Bell doesn't use real meat, but that was debunked years ago, so cool your jets. I'll also say that the meatloaf didn't skimp on the amount of meat, like there was a ton of it, and the juice from the meat dripped everywhere. It was super easy to tell why Glen Bell liked these. On that note, one thing I noticed is that these weren't really spicy at all. I saw some hot sauce at other tables, so I went and grabbed one to try along with my second taco. The chicken taco was pretty solid on its own, but I went ahead and added some hot sauce, which was delightful. The hot sauce had to have been made in-house. Another thing that jumped out at me was that the cheese was freshly shredded instead of the type of shredded cheese you find in bags at the grocery store that's built to last and just a lot drier. I know that might sound like a small detail, but I can't emphasize enough how much of a difference that made. On a less dramatic note, the tomatoes looked hand cut to me, which kind of got me wondering how tomatoes arrive at Taco Bell restaurants. I can't imagine they're arriving as like whole tomatoes, but I could be wrong. If you've ever worked at a Taco Bell, let me know in the comments how tomatoes arrive at the restaurant. My final taco was the carne asada soft taco, which looked a lot more like what you'd find at like a really good taco truck with the double corn tortilla. And the carne asada itself was delicious. I think probably my favorite of the three meats. This one also had salsa mexicana and fresh cilantro on top. I don't want to sound dramatic, but as I was eating this last taco, I thought to myself, this is one of the best tacos I've ever had. And I'm sure there could be people thinking like, well, yeah, if you eat at Taco Bell all the time, of course this is gonna blow your mind. But I just want to defend myself for a second and say that I'm also a lover of authentic Mexican street tacos, not just Taco Bell. And this was in a league of its own. It is funny to me, by the way, that not even Taco Bell claims to serve Mexican food. They describe their food as Mexican inspired. And I think everybody's cool with that. I think you can still appreciate it for what it is and kind of a genre of its own. Just like people can enjoy Pizza Hut even though it doesn't resemble a pizza from Italy. But that doesn't mean that Pizza Hut would be successful in Italy or that Taco Bell would be successful in Mexico, because it's not competing with the real thing. Taco Bell did try opening locations in Mexico in 1992 and 2007, and it failed both times. There is a Taco Bell about 500 feet from the border in San Ysidro, California, but I think that's as close as it gets. So, having tasted the taco that inspired the crunchy taco at Taco Bell, I'm left a little unsure of what to make of these two restaurants whose stories are kind of forever intertwined. On the one hand, Taco Bell currently has over 8,500 locations around the world, and they sell an estimated 2 billion tacos a year. The franchise is worth somewhere north of $10 billion. The Moonlight Cafe, on the other hand, still just has their one location and has struggled through one obstacle after another. For example, when Route 66 was replaced in 1959, it was made with left-hand exits in San Bernardino, which if you've driven in America, you know that most exit ramps are on the right side. And that was done intentionally so that drivers would end up on the white side of town instead of the Mexican side of town. And more recently, the restaurant struggled just to stay afloat through the pandemic. One of my favorite quotes about creative work comes from a newsletter I get, and it says, "You don't need to reinvent the wheel, you just need to show it to an audience that hasn't seen it before." And Glen Bell recognized that, so he took this proven concept in the hard shell taco and then introduced it to an audience, a white audience, that hadn't seen it before. And in a market that was quickly being flooded with burger places, he was able to stand out. In his biography, he's quoted as saying, "An innovative product will set you apart." And his innovation was Americanizing an existing product so that it could be mass produced. And I think the question in my mind is how to give credit or compensation to the original. That's actually a huge reason why I wanted to make this episode, to recognize and hopefully encourage people to go visit this family-owned restaurant that has continued serving the same high-quality, authentic Mexican food for almost 90 years. So if you're ever in Southern California, you should definitely add this to your list of places to visit. If you're a fan of Taco Bell, you're gonna love the Moonlight Cafe, or if you just really enjoy good food, I think you'll like it as well. Taco Bell, I know you're watching this, here are 2 suggestions for you. Okay, number 1, for your next pop-up Taco Bell experience, like the Bell Hotel or the Cantina's retirement community, you should do a Taco Bell-inspired mini golf course. You can finally fulfill Glen's lifelong dream. So that one's for free. You're welcome. And 2, it would be really cool to thank this family in some way. Maybe employees at the Meatla can be eligible for college scholarships from the Taco Bell Foundation. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. And to everyone else, thank you so much for watching. I hope you remember that even when it doesn't feel like it, it's gonna be okay. I'll see you soon.